The show starts by showing a lovely young woman named Nao Hanoka reminiscing about her cherished moments from her childhood with her mother. In the present, we see Nao returning to her room in the rain. She slips, and her belongings spill all over the road. Right then, a mysterious man approaches her, helps her pick up her items, and hands her a letter. Nao reads the letter and is shocked to learn that her mother is innocent and someone has betrayed her. Later at home, she begins cutting her hair to symbolize a solemn promise to seek revenge against those who wronged her mother. In the next scene, we discover that Nao possesses a remarkable talent as a confectioner, and one day she makes some delicious sweets for her friend Mayura. Mayura is so impressed that she invites Nao to make sweets for her upcoming wedding, and our heroine happily agrees to do so. But there's a catch. Another chef is also up for the position, so she must compete for the job. Intrigued, Nao asks about her competition and is stunned to learn that he is the renowned head chef of a famous restaurant known as Kuketsan. The story then takes us back 15 years to a time when Nao and her mother arrived at Kuketsan seeking employment. Nao's mother secures the job as a sweet maker and is even provided a place to live. As they were about to enter their new quarters, they meet a young boy named Tsubaki, who happens to be the owner's son. The two youngsters quickly form a strong bond, and they both learn the art of making sweets together. One day, Tsubaki invites Nao to play outside, but her mother Yuriko, worried about her asthma, stops her from going. Despite this, Tsubaki promises to stay by Nao's side and even offers her a future job at his family's restaurant once they grow up. Just then, his father arrives there and scolds him for playing in the servants' area. Later, Nao wakes up and begins searching for her mother around the house. To her shock, in the garden, she sees Tsubaki with blood on his face and hands and his father lying dead on the ground. Soon, the police arrive at the scene to investigate. When Tsubaki's mother asks him if he saw anyone entering his father's room, Tsubaki surprisingly points at Yuriko. Based on this statement, the police arrest Yuriko and accuse her of murdering her employer. Jumping back to the present, it's the day of the competition for Nao, and she gets ready to face off against Tsubaki, the head chef of Kuketsan. Tsubaki doesn't recognize Nao as she has grown up and changed her name from Sakura. In the kitchen, both Nao and Tsubaki begin crafting their sweets and present them to Mayura's family members. Everyone loves their sweets and praises their skills. This fills Nao with confidence, thinking that she can win the competition, secure more orders, and get her life back on track. However, her hopes are dashed when she sees Mayura talking to her father outside the house. She's trying to convince him to choose Nao for the wedding since her sweets are the best. Unfortunately, Mayura's father objects, explaining he can't go against Kuketsan and start a rivalry with one of the top restaurants in the city. Devastated, Nao walks away, upset that she never really stood a chance. Just then, Tsubaki approaches her and playfully proposes that they get married, leaving Nao speechless. But he quickly clarifies that he's only joking. However, Nao remembers her vow for revenge, and at that moment realizes that marrying Tsubaki could help her achieve her goal. So she stops him and unexpectedly accepts his proposal. In response, Tsubaki asks her to visit his place in 3 days with a gift, cautioning her that once she enters his house, there's no turning back. 3 days later, Nao arrives at Tsubaki's house with her incredible sweets as a gift. To her surprise, she finds a gathering of guests and learns Tsubaki is in fact getting married to a girl named Saori. Tsubaki's mother tries to send Nao away, citing an important family event, but Tsubaki intervenes, saying that he invited her. He then accepts her gift and tastes it in front of everyone. Surprisingly, Tsubaki likes the sweets so much that he boldly announces he will marry Nao instead of Saori. He even kisses her in front of everyone, leaving everyone utterly gobsmacked. This display of disrespect angers Saori's father, and he calls off the wedding. In the aftermath, Tsubaki's mother takes him aside and expresses her disappointment, highlighting the family's struggling business and Saori's father's agreement to provide them with a handsome dowry for the union. Unbeknownst to them, Tsubaki's grandfather overhears their conversation. He immediately addresses the guests, apologizing for the disruption. Witnessing his grandfather apologize, Tsubaki feels terrible and kneels before everyone, apologizing for his actions. He then speaks with Saori's father, confirming that the marriage was a business arrangement. Tsubaki actually wants to revive the family business on his own and make it the success it was 15 years ago. Pissed, the grandfather tells him he has 3 months to achieve this goal, or else he and Nao will be expelled from the house. Tsubaki accepts the challenge and retreats to his room with Nao. Inside the room, Nao asks Tsubaki if the only reason he wants to marry her is because she makes delicious sweets, and the latter nods his head in agreement. However, when he asks her why she agreed, she lies to him, saying that she has no work or place to live. Here, we learn that Nao's mother died while she was in prison, while she was sent off to the orphanage, which made her life a living hell. Meanwhile, we see Tsubaki's mother Yuki plotting against Nao for ruining her selfish plans. The next day, Tsubaki takes Nao to the kitchen and the latter is excited to create some sweets. However, to her dismay, Tsubaki asks her to clean the dishes, saying that she needs to own every aspect of the job in order to become a bona fide chef. Resolute now cleans the dishes. While doing so, she meets another kitchen staffer and asks him about any lifers who have been working in the restaurant for 15 years or more. However, the guy says that no one has that kind of history working there. Desperate to learn more about the circumstances of her mother's death, now snoops around the restaurant papers and discovers that one customer has been a regular for more than 20 years. Now immediately decides to meet the customer, so she lies to Tsubaki, telling him that the loyal customer has ordered sweets to be delivered to her place. At first, Tsubaki refuses to fill the request, but when now argues that she already agreed with the customer, he gets annoyed and starts making the order. The following morning, our heroine sets out to deliver the order to the customer, Fursei. When she arrives with the sweets, Fursei welcomes her and is excited to taste the sweets after abstaining for such a long time. However, when she opens the box, she finds the sweets filled with a horrific red substance and freaks the fuck out. Mortified now apologizes, but then Tsubaki shows up and takes responsibility for the debacle. Later, when the two are returning to Kuketsan, Tsubaki scolds now for lying about Fursei's order. But our heroine cleverly deflects and tells him to focus on finding the person who tampered with the product. In the kitchen, when Nao asks her coworker if he saw someone messing with the sweets, he confidently replies that Tsubaki's mother Yuki was checking on the box the previous day. With this information, Nao goes to Yuki's room, only to find her belongings being packed. Yuki demands that Nao leave the house immediately. However, our heroine lashes out and accuses her of tampering with the sweets. In response, Yuki angrily throws her belongings into the nearby lake. This devastates poor Nao, and she begins crying alone. Eventually, Tsubaki arrives and retrieves her items, saying that she needs to make sweet dishes for Fursei. Meanwhile, we see Fursei talking to a mysterious man. She asks him why he placed an order specifically made by Nao. The man simply replies that once she tastes it, she will find out. He also hints that it will transport her back 15 years. In the next scene, Tsubaki allows Nao to cook in the kitchen and lets her practice her best dish for Fursei. However, at the same time, the head chef of the place, Tomioka, enters the kitchen and stops her. Tsubaki tries to intervene, but Tomioka points out his lack of ownership and authority and inability to do a damn thing about it. Enraged, Tsubaki goes whining to his grandfather, but he once again admonishes him. The grandfather even goes so far to say that Tsubaki is not his real grandson, and he can never inherit the restaurant. Nao overhears this and feels really bad for him, revealing that our cute heroine has started crushing on Tsubaki. Afterward, Tsubaki writes a letter on behalf of his mother and sends it to Tomioka. Reading it, the latter becomes excited and goes to Yuki's room to meet her. However, to his surprise when he enters, he finds Tsubaki waiting for him. Our hero then reveals that he's well aware of his affair with his mother and threatens to reveal it to others if he doesn't give him full control of the kitchen. Panicking, Tomioka immediately agrees. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, as Nao is preparing the sweets, another employee, Karu, arrives to help her. Tsubaki watches as the two get along very well. Jealous, he interrupts him and reminds Karu that Nao is his future wife, so he shouldn't get too close to her. Hearing this, Karu leaves the kitchen, and the couple starts making the sweets. The following day, they deliver the sweets to Fursei's house and have her taste them. This time, she is spiritually moved by the sweets and mentions they remind her of the ones she used to eat 15 years ago. She raves about the sweets and books Kuketsan for their daughter's upcoming wedding. After closing the deal, the elated Tsubaki asks Nao what her secret ingredient is. In reply, she reveals that against his insistence, she added more honey and sugar. Later in the evening, the grandfather, Sojiro, finds out about Nao securing a massive event for their restaurant and is impressed, so he invites her to dinner. During the dinner, Sojiro disses Tsubaki, stating that he's not his real grandson and can never be the owner of Kuketsan. However, Nao defends her fiancé, stating that Tsubaki cares about the restaurant and would never do anything to harm the family's reputation. Her words irritate Sojiro, and he questions if she truly likes Tsubaki. When our heroine replies with a yes, he grabs her by the throat and accuses her of lying to him, saying he has seen them sleeping in different bedrooms. Fortunately, Tsubaki arrives and hauls his grandfather off of Nao, warning him to show respect to his future wife. He then hugs Nao and announces that from now on, they will sleep in the same room. Following this, he takes her inside a room which appears to be very small. Nao asks why he chose this particular room, and in response, Tsubaki reveals that it belonged to his childhood best friend, Sakura. He still misses her and likes to be close to things that remind him of her. Hearing this, Nao melts and hugs Tsubaki. The latter is up for this, and the two end up glazing that donut. The following morning, Yuki calls Nao to her room and asks her to help find a misplaced necklace. The latter helpfully agrees to it and begins searching for it. However, soon Yuki's demeanor changes and accusingly asks if she is Sakura, the daughter of the employee who killed her husband. Nao is completely taken off guard, but somehow manages to convincingly deny it. Fortunately, Sojiro arrives at the perfect time and informs Yuki that she has a visitor. Next, Yuki greets the woman who claims to be Nao's mother. Our heroine is obviously shook, but plays stupid. Meanwhile, Yuki dismisses the woman's claims, asserting that Nao is an orphan. In reply, the woman explains that Nao ran away from home when she was a kid and has been telling lies about her family since. Tsubaki then speaks to the woman and assures her that she doesn't need to worry about her daughter, as he is there to look after her. As the woman prepares to leave, Nao begins following her. Once outside, she confronts her and asks why she's pretending to be her mother. The lady replies that a mysterious man paid her to do so in order to help Nao. Hearing this, Nao remembers the man who gave her the letter and assumes the two men must be the same guy. She then asks for the identity and contact info of the mysterious man. Initially, the lady refuses, but after a lot of pleading, she hands Nao her restaurant's business card, saying the man is an evening regular. Meanwhile, Yuki approaches Tsubaki and asks if he really trusts the woman who claims to be Nao's mother. The latter doesn't answer the question, but instead deflects by declaring that he is going to marry Nao the following month, leaving her silent. Later, Tsubaki approaches Nao and asks her the main reason she agreed to marry him. She says that it really all comes down to her love for making sweets. Hearing this, Tsubaki takes Nao to her room and locks her in. A while later, when he opens the door, Nao unexpectedly kisses him and runs away. While fleeing, someone tries to attack her, but Tsubaki, who is following her, arrives in time to back her. However, in the process, his hand is injured. Later in the evening, Tsubaki admits that he locked her in the room to protect her from his evil mother, who will go to any lengths to harm her and sabotage their marriage. The next day, a young man visits Tsubaki and places a massive order for a concert he's organizing. The man mentions that Tsubaki's grandfather will be attending the concert. Because of his injured hand, Tsubaki hesitates accepting the job, but before he can do so, Nao assures him that he will not be disappointed. After the young man leaves, Tsubaki scolds Nao for not discussing things with him first, but she argues that it will be a great opportunity to expose Sujiro to their sweets. Seeing her confidence and determination, Tsubaki hands her the wheel. The next day, they wake up early and begin preparing the treats. Unbeknownst to them, Yuki is watching them and scheming. The scene then shifts to the day of the concert, where Nao encounters the mysterious man. She talks to him and learns that he has never met her mother in person, but knows of her. He explains that his father used to be a busy businessman, and her mother's sweets were the only thing that would bring his whole family together. He reveals that the letter he gave to her earlier was something he found amongst his father's belongings. During their conversation, Nao explains that they catered the concert to expose the grandfather to their sweets, but sadly, he rejected them. However, the mysterious man tells her that the grandfather has in fact had the sweets packed up to take home. Afterward, when Nao and Tsubaki return home, they see the grandfather thoroughly indulging in the sweets in front of his son's picture. Tsubaki is on the verge of tears as he discreetly watches his grandfather savor his sweets. Later at night, Tsubaki gets real close to Nao and begins kissing her. He fantasizes about Sakura and asks her to roleplay. However, Nao refuses to be anyone else and gives him a taste of how sweet Nao is. The nosy-ass spying bitch Yuki sees their interaction and loses it. Here, we discover that Yuki was in cahoots with Chef Karu, and he was the one who attacked Nao when she fled the locked room before. Next, we learn that Karu wants revenge on Tsubaki for his father's death. During his conversation with Yuki, he reveals that in the past, when his family took part in a competition, someone tampered with their entry, causing them to be disqualified. The competition was very important to their family's future, and they were banking on the win. However, while cleaning up, he found a Kuketsu uniform and assumed that Tsubaki was the one who committed the act. Because of the debacle, Karu's father faced financial trouble and died broken and poor. Since then, Karu has focused on destroying Tsubaki. Yuki then enters the picture and offers him money to destroy him and his relationship with Nao. Clearly, she doesn't want the girl to be a part of their family. Afterward, Karu approaches Nao and invites her to his room. Our innocent heroine agrees to it right away because it's the same one where she used to live with her mother. As soon as Nao enters the room, she remembers the wonderful time she spent there with her mother. After a while, Karu explains that he wants to help his father expand his confectionery business, so he's working here to learn the skills and earn money to contribute. Nao is thrilled to hear this and offers to help him achieve his dream. However, at the same time, Karu comes closer to her and tells her that Tsubaki betrayed him and his father in the past and tortured them. When Nao demands he clarify, he refuses to reveal the details and just tells her to leave Tsubaki and come to him. He also says that he loves her very much and will keep her happy. Just when he leans into Nao and is about to kiss her, Tsubaki arrives and yells at him. He then asks Nao what she's doing there and angrily tells her to leave. Suddenly, Karu grabs Nao from behind and tells Tsubaki that he loves her and wants to be with her. Hearing this, the latter snaps and grabs Karu by his collar. This almost creates an altercation between the two, but fortunately, Nao stops them and leads Tsubaki away. Once in their room, Tsubaki tells Nao that she should stay away from Karu as he is not a good guy. However, when Nao asks what he did to his family in the past, Tsubaki clams up and walks away. The following day, Nao decides to help Karu and his family reestablish their business. In order to do this, she starts preparing his cherished family favorites. Unfortunately, he says that they taste nothing like his father's. Despite this, Nao does not give up and continues tweaking her ingredients. While she is doing this, Karu tries to cozy up to her, but Nao is too busy making sweets and ignores him. To make the situation more uncomfortable, Karu tells Nao that Tsubaki has given him until the end of the week to leave the job. Hearing this, Nao decides to take action. Later, she confronts Tsubaki and criticizes him for firing Karu just for his indiscretion the previous night. Our hero is confused as he doesn't remember firing the guy. Nevertheless, he says that Karu doesn't have good intentions, so she should stay away from him. Next, after multiple attempts, Nao is finally able to perfect the sweets Karu's father likes. The latter tastes them and becomes emotional, engulfed in memories of his late father. He then approaches Nao and thanks her for making this happen. Meanwhile, the mysterious man from before meets Tsubaki and suggests he take part in an upcoming confection competition. During the meeting, the man also informs Tsubaki about Karu's family history, when years ago they took part in the competition and lost due to interference. He mentions that the family is now facing financial problems and the owner is in the hospital. Hearing this, Tsubaki decides to go to the hospital and meet the owner. In the following scene, Tsubaki meets Karu's mother and asks her about the fateful competition. Without any hesitation, she spills the tea. According to her, Karu still believes that Tsubaki was the one who sabotaged their entry. Right then, Karu also arrives and is shocked and angered to see Tsubaki talking to his mother. However, he learns that Tsubaki has actually cleared all of his family debts. Feeling emasculated, he confronts Tsubaki for paying his debt. In reply, our hero tells him that he can choose to settle the debt by working and making sweets for his restaurant. The scene then shifts to Tsubaki informing everyone about the competition. He makes an announcement that this time they will make Nao sweets. Together, the team then prepares the sweets and packs them for the competition. Meanwhile, Yuki doesn't want them to present Nao sweets, so she asks Karu to ruin them. However, his attempts ultimately backfire, and the sweets taste exactly like his father's. Because of this, Yuki takes matters into her own hands and swaps them for different ones. On the day of the competition, Nao distributes the sweets, which are winning everyone over. Confused, Yuki struggles to understand how it could be. Right then, Tsubaki approaches her and tells her that he was onto her evil plan. So he had switched the boxes before she had a chance to destroy them. Here, it's revealed that Yuki was also the one who destroyed the Karu's family entry years ago. Her motive was to ensure her son won the competition. Back in the present, the mysterious man approaches Yuki and exclaims that they are meeting after a long time. He advises her to accept Nao as her daughter-in-law, or else in time, she will regret it. Intimidated, Yuki walks away immediately. Afterward, the winner of the competition is announced and the Kukutan team is declared the victor. When the director of the competition asks Tsubaki what the winning entry is called, the latter names it Shimaya, the name of Karu's shop. Hearing this, Karu's misguided ego disassembles. Next, we are again brought back to Sayori, the girl who Tsubaki was originally set to marry. One day, through some sources, Sayori learns that Nao is the daughter of the woman who killed Tsubaki's father. Armed with this information, she decides to destroy his relationship with Nao. Meanwhile, while trying on some wedding dresses, Nao feels faint and begins vomiting. Everyone in the room assumes she's pregnant, but our heroine insists she is suffering from food poisoning. After returning home, Nao is surprised to find out that she is actually pregnant and decides to just sit with this for now. The following day, Tsubaki is personalizing wedding invitations. Totally nonchalant, Nao enters the room. When Tsubaki asks about inviting her mother, Nao deflects, saying that her mother lives far away in a village and it will be a challenging task for her to attend the wedding. Tsubaki says, regardless, he will arrange everything for her travel and accommodation and insists on inviting her. In a completely dramatic moment, Yuki enters the room and undermines Nao by revealing that her mother lives in the city and runs a restaurant. Thinking quickly, Nao states that the point is, she doesn't want her mother at the wedding. Unfortunately, Tsubaki thinks he knows better, and he decides to meet Nao's mother in person and personally invite her to the wedding. In the following scene, the two visit the woman's restaurant, and she turns out to be the same person who posed as Nao's mother. Her name is Lena, and she gives multiple excuses for not being able to attend their wedding. However, Tsubaki has a rebuttal for each excuse. Later, as Lena is about to disclose the truth, our heroine stops her. Sensing the tension in the room, Tsubaki leaves, allowing the women to have a private conversation. A fed-up Lena tells Nao to reveal the truth about her parentage, but right then, the latter feels unwell and starts vomiting. Observing this, Lena quickly realizes that Nao is pregnant and asks if Tsubaki is aware of the situation. Nao responds that she hasn't told anyone yet and expresses her concerns about Tsubaki's reaction. Lena tells her that secrets cause greater concern and reassures her that Tsubaki will accept the news gracefully. Meanwhile, after finding out that Nao is the daughter of Tsubaki's father's murderer, Sayori plans to tell Tsubaki about it and ruin his wedding. However, her father warns her about getting involved in Tsubaki's family matters. The next day, Nao finally decides to disclose her pregnancy to Tsubaki, but before she can do so, she learns that he is going away for a few days. She approaches Tsubaki and suggests spending some quality time with him before he leaves. So he takes her near a pond, and the two share a romantic kiss. Nao tries to tell him about her pregnancy, but Yuki interrupts the moment to remind Tsubaki that it's time for him to leave. In the next scene, Kaoru sees that Nao is down, so he approaches her and tries to cheer her up. He invites her to stay in his room for a few days. Nao is thrilled to be in her childhood home and begins re-exploring it. When she opens the cupboard, she finds a black box inside and opens it, only to find a letter exchanged between her mother Yuriko and Tsubaki's late father, Itsuki. Bitch! These two were having an affair, and Nao is the product of that affair. Not only that, she discovers that Tsubaki is not Itsuki's son. Right then, Sojiro enters the room and asks her what she's doing. Nao plays it cool and asks Sojiro if he's ever considered Tsubaki for the successor of Kuketsan. In reply, the grandfather states that Tsubaki is not the real heir of the restaurant, but Sakura is. He also reveals that he knew about the relationship between Yuriko and Itsuki and has been searching for Sakura for many years. Hearing this, Nao understands why Tsubaki hates Sakura. She realizes that if Sakura returns to the family, the restaurant will be hers, and Tsubaki will never get to own it, and that she is the only thing standing in the way of everything he ever wanted. After a few days, Tsubaki returns home and begins searching for Nao. The employees tell him that Nao is with Sojiro, presenting some sweets she made. Tsubaki rushes to his grandfather and finds him thoroughly enjoying the sweets. He says they remind him of the ones Sakura used to make. Hearing this, Tsubaki has a realization but tries to remain calm, hoping Nao is not actually Sakura. In the next scene, Sayori visits Tsubaki and tells him that Nao is actually the daughter of his father's murderer. Despite hearing this, the latter responds casually and suggests Sayori stay out of his family matters. Later, when Tsubaki meets Nao, he asks her about what she was going to say to him before he left. Realizing it's not the right time to fess up, Nao suggests Tsubaki focus on his work. However, when she's about to walk away, he grabs her from behind and reminds her that they are going to marry soon. Afterward, determined to find out what happened with Itsuki, Nao visits the room where he was murdered, but finds it locked. Just then, an employee arrives and asks what she's doing there. Nao asks him about the closed room, and he replies that it's only opened once a year. He then encourages Nao to stay with Tsubaki, as he has been more focused and kinder to everyone since she arrived in his life. Meanwhile, Sojiro is with a lawyer stating that he wants to give all his property to his real grandchild. At the same time, Yuki enters the room and tries to tell the grandfather that Tsubaki is his real grandson and that he needs to accept him as an heir. However, Sojiro refuses to accept it and mentions that he's not going to change his decision. The scene then shifts to a tea ceremony that Sojiro has arranged for his guests. As he is busy attending to them, Yuki secretly enters the main room and begins searching for the will he signed the other day. Unfortunately, Sojiro arrives and catches her red-handed. He then shows her the will and reveals that he's well aware of her affair with Tomioka. In her defense, Yuki tells him that she did all this after she found Itsuki with Yuriko. However, when the grandfather refuses to give her the will, she pushes him to the ground and runs away with the paper. Unbeknownst to her, a candle in the room falls on the wooden floor and slowly catches fire. After a while, when Sojiro doesn't return to the guest room, Nao decides to go look for him. To her surprise, he's not in his room, so she goes to the master's room. There, instead of the grandfather, she notices Yuki. At this moment, Nao gets a vision from her childhood and remembers that it was Yuki whom she saw with Itsuki while she was running to search for her mother. With this, she deduces that Yuki was the one who killed her husband. The evil woman wanted to take revenge on Nao's mother, so she blamed the murder on her. Filled with rage, Nao confronts Yuki about the heinous act. However, the latter denies the accusation and asks for proof. To her surprise, Nao reveals that she's Sakura, and she saw her with Itsuki just before he was murdered. As soon as Nao reveals this, Yuki notices Tsubaki standing behind her and approaches him, stating that she's a fraud and has been using him since the beginning. Enraged, Tsubaki comes closer to Nao and asks her the reason for the lies. When our heroine begs him to believe in her, he refuses and instead tells her that he will never forgive her. Right then, an employee arrives and tells them about the fire. He also reveals that Sojiro is trapped in the flames and needs help. Following this, Tsubaki tries to get through the fire to save his grandfather, but ends up falling to the ground. He attempts to get up, but cannot do so despite multiple tries. Remembering Sakura and realizing that she is back to take everything from him, he falls unconscious. On the other hand, Nao is overcome by stomach pain and falls to the ground while waiting for Tsubaki to arrive. Fortunately, the mysterious man arrives out of nowhere and carries her to the hospital. A few days later, Nao opens her eyes in the hospital and finds Yuki looking after her. She then inquires about the well-being of the grandfather and Tsubaki. Yuki tells her that no one was hurt in the fire, but gives her the bad news that her baby is no more. As soon as Nao hears this, she breaks into tears and hugs Yuki. She also believes that Tsubaki has no feelings for her as he didn't come to meet her. Slowly but steadily, she begins hating him. Meanwhile, as Sojiro is still in the hospital, Tsubaki takes control of the restaurant and does all of his duties. Later, we see him making sweets with Sayori. He appears to be sad for her. It's then revealed that when he was trapped in the fire, Sayori was the one who saved him, but suffered burns to her face in the process. He asks her why she always wears a red dress, and Sayori replies that she does it to get noticed. As her sisters are more beautiful than her, she wants to get noticed at every event and to be in her father's good books. Sayori also mentions that she rejected her father's next marriage proposal for her and is willing to do any sort of work in Kuketsan. Luckily, Tsubaki agrees to help her and keeps her around as hired help. The next day, Tsubaki goes to the hospital to visit his grandfather and notices a bouquet of flowers placed beside him. He asks the nurse who brought it, but he doesn't get any robust reply from her. With this, Tsubaki assumes that Nao had brought the flowers and begins searching for her, but to no avail. The scene then fast forwards 3 years, and now Kuketsan is as successful as it used to be 18 years before. Sayori is taking good care of the shop and the customers, while Tsubaki is busy making sweets with his employees. Later, Karu approaches Tsubaki and hands him the last payment of his debt. He then asks the latter if he remembers Nao. Tsubaki replies that he remembers her every time he makes sweets, but she has already moved on with her life, and he also needs to do the same. After a while, Tsubaki goes to attend a business deal with an old lady, but learns that she has been receiving her sweets from a new restaurant, Hanagasumi. The lady also mentions that the restaurant has very delicious sweets, and she loves them. Hearing this, Tsubaki assumes that the restaurant might belong to Nao. Meanwhile, we see Nao at the same restaurant. She is currently talking to the mysterious guy, discussing her plan to destroy Kuketsan. Meanwhile, Tsubaki returns home and tells his employees that the Samudar Pavilion, a high-profile family, selected Hanagasumi as their supplier. However, he also mentions that they hold a spring garden party every year, and they can compete against their opponent there. In the next scene, Nao is talking to the mysterious man, Takagawa, who is waiting for her at her restaurant. He tells her to prepare for the face-off against Kuketsan and stop worrying about the results. In reply, Nao suggests that he stop treating her like a child. Here, it's revealed that Yuki tried to blame the fire on Nao and sent officers to investigate and interrogate her. Moreover, Yuki even talked to the media and slandered Nao, calling her a demon who ruined her family. Because of all this, our poor heroine got frustrated and ran to the forest, searching for peace, but slipped and fell, injuring herself. Luckily, the mysterious man, Takagawa, helped her up and fulfilled her desire to start her own sweet shop. Back in the present, Nao mentions that she has heard Tsubaki quit making sweets and is now more focused on handling the business for the family. On the other hand, worried that her son will lose the competition, Yuki meets with Misoguchi, one of the judges from the Samudar Pavilion's event. She offers him money and suggests he make sure Tsubaki win the competition. Misoguchi quickly agrees to the request and mentions that he has been connected to Kuketsan for a long time. On the day of the competition, while the judges are tasting their dishes, Nao notices Tsubaki standing alone on the side of the bridge. She slowly approaches him, but despite coming face to face, he doesn't recognize her. Right then, Sayori arrives and Nao leaves. It is at this moment our heroine realizes that Tsubaki has stopped making sweets, not because he's busy in meetings, but because he's losing his sight. Next, it's announced that Kuketsan has won the competition and receives a lot of orders. All of the other staff are proud of Tsubaki, and they congratulate him wholeheartedly. On the other hand, Nao is upset having lost the competition to Tsubaki. Seeing this, Takagawa presents different pictures of Yuki and Misoguchi together, suggesting this was the main reason Kuketsan was declared the winner. Nao is shocked to hear this and decides to take revenge on Yuki. In the following scene, Yuki invites Misoguchi for dinner at her house and expresses her gratitude for making her son win the competition. Unbeknownst to her, Tsubaki arrives there and hears their conversation. He gets angry at his mother for cheating, but the evil woman mentions that she will go to any extreme to ensure the restaurant wins competitions. Afterward, Tsubaki visits Nao's restaurant and is surprised to see Misoguchi there, enjoying her sweets. As soon as he sees Tsubaki, Misoguchi walks away from the restaurant, letting him talk to Nao. Tsubaki then tells Nao that he has been searching for her since the day of the fire, but couldn't find her anywhere. In reply, Nao mentions that she is Sakura, the daughter of the murderer, and he should stay away from her. Right then, Takagawa arrives and introduces himself as Nao's husband. He then suggests Tsubaki stop questioning his wife and leave. Back at Kugetsan, all the employees are shocked to see Nao's picture in the newspaper, mentioning that she is the owner of their rival restaurant, Hanagasumi. Yuki also sees this and asks Tsubaki if he already knew the truth. The latter replies with a yes and heads towards the hospital. In the hospital, the doctor advises Tsubaki to have eye surgery as soon as possible, or else he is going to lose his vision completely. Hearing this, Tsubaki gets worried, and as he walks out of the doctor's room, collides with Nao but doesn't recognize her. However, she notices him and talks to him, suggesting he take good care of himself. In reply, Tsubaki mentions that he needs to prepare for the upcoming events to maintain the reputation of the restaurant at any cost. Here, Nao realizes that Tsubaki hasn't changed a bit and is still the same person she fell in love with. Someone who loves to make sweets and is serious about the restaurant. However, she also tells him that she will fight for whatever belongs to her, and she will do her best to take over Kugetsan. Next, to get more attention, Sayori lies to everyone, telling them that she is pregnant with Tsubaki's child. Yuki becomes very happy to hear this and assures her that she can now get Tsubaki to marry her. She then takes Sayori to her family and talks to her father about her pregnancy. Initially, Sayori's father gets angry at the news, but after a while he calms down and congratulates her. Later at night, Tsubaki hears the news of Sayori's pregnancy and is shocked because he never even touched her. He then confronts her about it, and Sayori admits her lie. After a while, she suddenly removes her clothes and suggests Tsubaki get intimate with her. However, he angrily refuses, saying he doesn't want to. Tsubaki simply mentions that he will not tell anybody about the lie and that Sayori can stay at his house as long as she wants. In the next scene through Takagawa, Nao learns that Yuki was actually with the grandfather right before the restaurant caught fire on that fateful day. So without wasting any time, she goes to the hospital to meet Sojiro. Yuki also happens to be there, and now confidently tells her about her new relationship with Mitsuguchi. As soon as Yuki hears this, she gets shocked and pushes Nao away. In response, our heroine tells her that she will never get to own Kugetsan and reveals to the grandfather that she is his real granddaughter, Sakura. Sojiro hears this, but does not react to it for the time being. Later, Yuki abruptly discharges the old man from the hospital and brings him home. Tsubaki is shocked to see this and questions Yuki about it. In response, the evil woman shows concern for the grandfather to take care of him personally. After a while, Nao also visits Kugetsan to meet the grandfather, but finds Sayori in the restaurant. The latter lets her in and now goes straight to Sojiro's room, telling him the truth. She also shows him the DNA report that she got from her mother's box, which proves everything. Unfortunately, Yuki enters the room at the same time and tears up the DNA report. Sojiro doesn't react to it, but suggests Yuki leave the room. He then asks Nao to make sweets for him to confirm her identity. Nao does so, and Sojiro finds the taste exactly like Sakura used to make. He then calls Tsubaki into the room and tells him that he and Nao need to compete against each other to gain ownership of the restaurant. Following this, Nao begins preparing for the competition but fails to make the sweets she wants. Takagawa then motivates her and suggests she make the sweets from her heart rather than for the sake of the competition. He also confesses his love for her and mentions that after the competition, he wants to marry her. Nao is shocked to hear this, but Takagawa asks her to ignore it and focus on making sweet. Next, Sayori feels bad for lying to everyone and reveals to Kaoru that she is not actually pregnant. The two then visit Nao's restaurant and ask her to get back with Tsubaki, as he still loves her. To their dismay, Nao replies that their separation was the best thing that could have happened to them, and she doesn't want to return. Meanwhile, while walking down the road, Tsubaki loses his eyesight momentarily and bumps into Nao's fake mother from earlier, Lina. The latter recognizes him right away and helps him, bringing him to her restaurant. After a while, Tsubaki regains his eyesight and mentions that he always knew she wasn't Nao's mother. In response, Lina tells him about Nao's pregnancy and what happened to her after the fire. Back at home, Tsubaki notices Yuki demanding Sayori get pregnant at any cost so that she can marry her son. Enraged, he then intervenes in the conversation and questions his mother about why she is doing all this. In reply, Yuki tells him that she doesn't want to lose the restaurant and is willing to go to any lengths to save it. In the next scene, just before the impending competition, Nao and Tsubaki meet on a bridge, both visibly agitated. Nao confronts Tsubaki, expressing her inability to forgive him for being the cause of her mother's suffering and the hardships in her life. However, amidst her anger, she admits that she still loves him and embraces him in a heartfelt hug. The scene then shifts to the day of the competition, where both Nao and Tsubaki have poured their hearts into creating their finest sweet. Sojiro, the judge, begins by sampling Nao's creation and finds it delightful. He then proceeds to taste Tsubaki's sweet, which appears rather simple. Intrigued, he asks Tsubaki why he chose this particular sweet. Our hero explains that it's the very sweet he learned to make from Sojiro and his father, a recipe that carries sentimental value. Sojiro reminisces about his past and takes a bite of the sweet. To his astonishment, he discovers that the taste resembles the one his son Itsuki used to create, and he genuinely enjoys it. This is the first time Sojiro has tasted one of Tsubaki's creations since his son's passing. Finally, Sojiro expresses his satisfaction with both sweets, but requests some time to deliberate before declaring the winner. He instructs Nao and Tsubaki to wait in separate rooms, and he will indicate the victor by knocking and opening the chosen door. Sojiro then calls Yuki to taste the sweets and tells her that if she's able to find Tsubaki's sweets among them, he will give the store to her. Hurriedly, Yuki begins tasting the sweets and likes the one that Nao made. She selects it and claims that it must have been made by Tsubaki. However, to her shock, when the grandfather takes her to the maker of the sweet and opens the door, it turns out to be Nao. Sojiro declares her the winner and asks her to take care of Kuketsan. Enraged, Yuki goes to Tsubaki and begins beating him for losing the competition. The grandfather tries to stop Yuki but gets hurt in the process and falls to the ground. Seeing this, Tsubaki calls the doctor to come care for his grandfather. During the treatment, Sojiro asks everyone to exit the room except for Tsubaki. He then tells him that he liked his sweet but couldn't declare him the winner because he made the sweet solely for himself in the competition. He then apologizes to Tsubaki for his behavior and suggests he get away from the trouble of the restaurant and live his life to the fullest. After saying this, Sojiro passes away. The next day after the grandfather's funeral, Tsubaki prepares to leave the house. Yuki tries to stop him, telling him that he's the real owner of the restaurant, but he doesn't listen to her. Following this, Nao approaches him and suggests he take care of himself and also get the surgery on his eyes. Tsubaki then leaves, telling Nao to never let the store down and take it to new heights. On the other hand, Sayori and Kaoru are at Yugo's restaurant talking about Tsubaki and his real father. Right then, Mitsuguchi enters the room and tells him that he knows who Tsubaki's father is. Here, it's revealed that Tsubaki and the mysterious guy, Takagawa, are actually siblings. This means that their fathers are one and the same. Back at Kuketsan, Yuki is consumed by her vengeful intentions. She begins to set fire to the essential tools used for making sweets, determined to destroy the store. However, her destructive plan is interrupted when Takagawa arrives on the scene, wielding a knife and confronting her. He sternly tells her to stop troubling Nao and insists that she leave her alone. Just then, Nao enters, diffusing the tension and preventing Takagawa from causing harm to Yuki. Using this opportunity, Yuki snatches the knife from Takagawa's grasp and starts burning the tools, prompting Nao to desperately try to extinguish the flame. Fortunately, Tsubaki arrives just in time and puts his coat over the fire to extinguish it, saving the equipment. With the immediate danger averted, he turns his attention to Yuki, inquiring about his true father. Tsubaki learns that he and Takagawa are actually siblings. He proceeds to question Yuki about Itsuki's murder, but she quickly denies any involvement. Tsubaki, however, reveals his understanding of the knife switch and Yuki's suspicious behavior on the day of his father's death. In a tense moment, Yuki finally opens up about her complicated feelings towards Itsuki. She admits to feeling unloved by him and discovering his affection for Yuriko. This revelation is what caused her to plot to kill Itsuki. Furthermore, she confesses to having an affair with Takagawa's father and using it as leverage to blackmail him into killing her husband. Yet, Takagawa's father could not follow through with the plan. The shocking truth then emerges. Takagawa is the true culprit behind Itsuki's murder. He acknowledges his guilt, explaining that he took such a drastic step because his mother felt seriously ill upon learning of the affair. Takagawa recounts the night of the incident. He had intended to end Yuki's life, but Itsuki intervened and confronted him. In the ensuing struggle, the knife was inadvertently thrust into Itsuki, leading to his tragic demise. When Tsubaki questions why Takagawa waited so long to seek revenge on his mother, he reveals that his delayed actions were motivated by a desire to secure Nao's rightful ownership of the store, as he believes he was the one who caused pain and suffering for both Nao and her mother. Confronting his actions, Takagawa offers a heartfelt apology to Nao and eventually surrenders himself to the police. In the following scene, Yuki has realized her errors and leaves the household. She can be seen wandering the streets and, in a fateful moment, saves a child from an oncoming truck. Tragically, she gets hit in the process and dies. Devastated, Tsubaki mourns for his mother and learns that she had selflessly donated her eyes to him. However, he struggles to accept them, fearing that if he sees the world through her eyes, it might somehow harm the family store. At this moment, the head chef, Tomioka, approaches Tsubaki and speaks about his mother's profound love for him. He reveals that she signed the eye donation papers when she learned of her son's gradual loss of eyesight, a condition impacting his ability to craft sweet. But despite this, Tsubaki remains resistant to undergoing the surgery, refusing to take on his mother's eye. Later on, Nao follows Tsubaki, aiming to make him realize the importance of his sight in pursuing his dreams of creating exceptional sweet. Initially, he rejects her pleas and the idea of surgery, but eventually comprehends his mother's deep affection and decides to undergo the procedure. The story then fast-forwards 3 months, and we see Nao is adeptly managing her responsibilities at Kuketsan. She effectively coordinates the kitchen staff and attends to restaurant patrons. During this period, Kaoru approaches Sayori, confesses his feelings, and she surprisingly accepts his proposal, agreeing to enter a relationship and assist him in establishing his own shop. Another employee discusses Tsubaki's potential return to the restaurant. The consensus is that their partnership could take the restaurant to new heights. Hears this conversation and contemplates reaching out to Tsubaki. In the closing scene, Nao meets Tsubaki and implores him to rejoin the restaurant, highlighting the establishment's need for him and her personal yearning for his guidance. Touched by her words, Tsubaki agrees to return and help her. The drama concludes on a positive note as the two embrace and share a passionate kiss, united in their determination to shape a brighter future together.